Happy New Year to all NBA fans, but especially Cavaliers fans, since their team keeps rolling with another win over the Warriors. What are the Bulls doing? What are they doing? Also, we're going to have to talk. Are the Sixers back again? All that plus New Year's resolutions for all NBA fans here on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being with us Monday through Friday as we are here on the afternoon show. We talk about the biggest topics in the NBA, break them down with our crew. I'm Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network. You can catch me at Locked On Nuggets, as well as at the Action Network and on my Substacks as well. I'm joined by Locked On Bulls host Hayes. You can catch him on Twitter at CEO Hayes. Doug Branson is off today. He's off trying to find a time machine to bring back Muggsy Bogues. On today's show, we will talk about what we learned in 2024. It's that time for reflection on New Year's Eve. So what do we learn from the NBA in 2024? We're going to ask where the Bulls are going because they're winning games and actually aren't bad, maybe. I'm going to try and convince Hayes that maybe the Bulls don't suck and why that probably sucks. But we're going to start today with who's stopping the Cavs, man. Cavs keep it rolling. They get the win over the Golden State Warriors on Monday night. I said this on Twitter, and I really believe it, Hayes. It's like, okay, usually if a team goes into a West Coast road trip versus a team that's got Steph Curry, Draymond Green, 4 titles, had expectations this year, got off to this hot start, you and I were like, I don't know about this. We weren't buying the Warriors early. But if they get that kind of win, we're usually like, statement win. The Cavaliers are sending a message. And instead, I'm like, yeah, no, this is just kind of what the Cavaliers do. Like, this is just who they are. I'm really impressed with that win, though, last night. Regardless of expecting it, I still think it's impressive that they're not having these letdown spots and they continue to get big win after big win.
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs are a team that's just they've been going full speed ahead the whole entire season, and they have not had, like we talked about Boston having that lull there for a moment. They still may be in somewhat, like almost every team at the top of their respective conferences have had a bit of a letdown, and the Cavs just keep rolling, and they're doing it through their depth. There's a different player stepping up big time every night, and we still haven't seen Donovan Mitchell go full Donovan Mitchell for an extended period of time this season, which really makes the Cavs even more scary.
Yeah, let's put a pin in that. I got a specific question about that for you here in a second.
Okay.
Let's forget the Celtics. Okay, let's take the Celtics and let's put them in a little box on the side because the Cavaliers are 8-0 versus the Western Conference so far this season. I think they're 8-1. If they make the finals, let's say let's just say that something happens and Boston doesn't get there. A lot of things can happen in sports, but let's say the Cavaliers make the finals. What teams from the West do you think would, not could, would beat the Cavaliers?
Oh, I'm still putting OKC Thunder over the Cavaliers. I know that I may be out on an island by myself with that, but I just think that what they're able to do defensively, especially if Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein are able to get time together to get in rhythm, I would love to see those two front courts against each other. And I trust the perimeter defense of the OKC Thunder a little bit more than the Cavs to put them over the top there. I think the Houston Rockets can make it interesting, but it's their first year, so I'm not going to pick them to beat a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers yet. So I'd say OKC, and honestly, a fully healthy Dallas Mavericks team, I would pick those two teams over the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Dallas would be a great matchup. I think so. Here's my thing. I love OKC. They're one of the most fun watches in the league. Their defense is so tenacious. I love watching Shea. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love guys that are able to control pace the way that he does and the little subtle moves that he makes to get to his shots. I love Shea's game. I love J-Dub. I like Dags is so great. Like, I like this Thunder team a ton. They're still inexperienced. They have one playoff series win under their belt. They have never been in the finals before. And my biggest question is the shooting is not great this year. And maybe it turns and they knock them. Maybe it's the opposite of last year where they shot the lights out in the regular season and couldn't hit water when they got to the playoffs. Maybe that flips this year. But I do worry about, all right, finals, championship on the line. Can Isaiah Joe knock him down? Can Aaron Wiggins knock him down? Can AJ Mitchell make the plays? Can Lou Dort hit those threes? Because Dort's been a good shooter the last 2 seasons, but when in key situations, he's the guy that everyone's going to be like, we're going to dare you to shoot. Now, counter that is going to be like, do you believe in Max Strus? Do you believe in Isaac Okoro? Do you believe in Ty Jerome? Do you believe in my guy Dean Wade? 22-1, by the way, when Dean Wade plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers. 22-1. They're like, which set of shooters do you kind of believe in? And I think it's a fair question. But I think I still lean towards the Cavs because I've seen Mitchell play in big games, because I think Garland really has turned a corner. And I like their defensive size too. Like Hartenstein and Chet versus Mobley and Allen would be so great. But Jared Allen is so sneaky good. There were so many plays last night that he made scoring, post-ups, passes on the interior versus the Warriors. Like it's so great because Allen doesn't, it's not like he barely kind of figures it out. It's not like Cat where you're like, oh man, he got it to go. Like Allen's just like, all right, I'm just going to move to this turnaround shot. You can't block it. And I've got good touch. Like he's so solid in all areas. I kind of like the Cavs in that matchup. I do think that the Mavericks are probably the team that I would say would beat them if they're fully healthy because of their formula. But man, that'd be a great series if we get the Cavs and the Mavs in the finals. Darius Garland led all scorers again last night, again with 25. We kind of touched on this when we were doing all-star stuff earlier, but I do want to I didn't get like an actual concrete answer from you. Based off of their team success, how many all-stars should the Cavaliers have this season?
3.
Which ones?
Donovan, Darius, and Mobley.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I'll go with. Jared Allen, it's like a pick 22 between like Jared Allen and Mobley, but I'd say Mobley. I'll say Mobley.
I think you got to have 4. I just think you do. 4? Yeah, I think you got it, man. I mean, look, they're on a 70-win pace, and how many teams that have won 70 games or were on pace for it that didn't have that? And I guess the answer is probably the Warriors, right? Because they had Steph and Dre and Clay. Mm-hmm. And we don't think they're going to win. I'm not saying they're going to win 70 games. It's really hard. Teams, just because the Cavaliers haven't gone through a dip doesn't mean that they're not going to. Although the sun's getting real low for them to kind of show some sort of real weakness here.
Yeah, I think too, like, I mean, there's precedence for it as well. Like that year that all Atlanta Hawks starters, all 5 of their starters made the All-Star team, and they weren't nearly as good as what this Cleveland Cavaliers team is. So I could see 4 getting in.
I do think it's impressive that if you were like, hey, the Cavs only get 1. It's not fair, but the Cavs only get 1. I would be like Darius Garland, no question. Like it wouldn't, there's like no hesitation from me. And if you're like, who's the best player? I'd be like Donovan Mitchell. And not to keep making the parallels, but I'll just say this is how I felt about the Boston Celtics last year, where if you were like, who's their best player? I was like, oh, it's Jason Tatum, no question. Who's having the best season of any Boston Celtic? Oh, Jaylen Brown, no question. That's how I feel. Like I think that parallel is pretty interesting. Speaking of Donovan, so Donovan's stats are all down. He's shooting better from 3 than ever. 2-point efficiency is like a little bit down. It's 50% versus 53% last year, but that's okay. Even his assists, though, are down. All of his numbers are down, but that's mostly if you look at it because his usage is percentage of possessions where you have the ball, right? Where it's score, it's no assists. That's why Jokic is never as high as he should be. It's score, turnover, free throws, right? Donovan's usage level is the lowest it has been at since his rookie season. Now, we saw something kind of similar last year with Jason Tatum, where Tatum took a step back to make the entire team better. And my question for you, Hayes, is in the 3-point flood era, as I'm calling it, is this the way? Like, is this just like with how good shooting is, do you need to move away from heliocentric alpha dog, gonna go get mine, one guy leads the way, and more, you have a great player to call on if you need him, but in a lot of situations, it's that more collective team success around 3-point shooting.
I think now with the modern NBA, you want that collective team success. You still want that guy that could put the team on their back at times, But I think if you're looking at teams that are going to have that most sustained success, it has to be through teamwork nowadays. Like there's just teams are taking so many threes nowadays, and there's more depth across the NBA than really ever before. So I think you're going to need to have that team balance to be able to do it. But still having that alpha dog mentality is important. But I think
Yeah.
we're past the point of it just being one guy that can
Like,
get you over that hump.
I think Donovan's ready if it when it gets to be that time for him to do that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's willing to play the way that he has, I'm really impressed with. And honestly, I think some of this kind of shows in. So Giannis, I think, is the closest thing to what we've got this season, where he's just a tank, right? He's just rolling through and dominating. Jokic, obviously, too, I think is on that level. But interestingly, when you start to look at it, guess what? Those teams are winning by less when those guys are on the floor. That's not because those guys are playing selfishly. That's what they have to do for their teams. They can't play like the Cavaliers, like the Celtics, like these squads, because they don't have the surrounding talent right now. And I just think it's really interesting watching those kind of guys put up these insane numbers, carry their teams, but the margin for error is so much more narrow. Like their floor is lower, their ceiling is lower when you're trying to play like that. Yeah. On the other side, Hayes is from Locked On Bulls, and you see him decked in the red on youtube.com/Locked On Nuggets in the background. I gotta ask this guy about the Bulls because I'm fascinated by A, how good are the Bulls, and B, where are they going? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has a solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you can get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX. Better sex made simple. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to go to lockedondaily.com. Your team has got a free daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. We've got newsletters for every team in the NBA. Make sure to go check that out. I write a bunch of dispatches on Locked On Nuggets. Lots of guys do different stuff. You're going to get great content. There's writing from Katie Heindel, who's phenomenal. Mike Shearer, who's one of my favorite current up-and-coming writers for basketball poetry. He's excellent. Go check it out at lockedondaily.com. Hayes, the Bulls won again. They beat Doug's Hornets. I can't believe Doug ducked you. I can't believe Doug just ducking out because he didn't want to face the smoke of his Hornets taking a tough loss to the Chicago Bulls. They've won back-to-back games. They're streaking. They're 5-5 in their last 10. But when I started diving into the numbers here, I was actually kind of interested in this. So when I was like, wait, they're 3 games under 500. They're 3 games under 500. They've had the 6th hardest schedule. So a lot of it, I look at the 3 kind of types of games I look at when trying to figure out a win profile are how do you do versus division, how do you do at home, and how do you do versus teams under 500. And I was like, oh, the Bulls are terrible at home, so that's why they're a bad team. And then I looked at who they've played, and they played every great team at home. Every juggernaut has rolled through Chicago and beaten them at home. Mm-hmm. This was the big one. They're 10-5 against East teams that aren't the Celtics, Cavs, or Bucks. They've played those teams 9 times. You can't expect the Bulls to beat the Celtics, Cavs, or Bucks. You just can't. That's 3 of the absolute cream of the crop in the East. But if we get past that, against the teams that are going to play the most for the rest of the season, the Eastern Conference, they're 10-5. Is this team actually pretty okay?
No. Well, here's the thing. They can be. The problem with the Chicago Bulls, to get more in depth, is that their defense is atrocious. They have no actual half-court offense. Right now, they're living and dying by 3-point shots and teams getting cold. We have no interior paint defense. And that's why, like, don't get me wrong, there are times where you see this Bulls team and you're like, how are we not at least the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference? Because in some games, depending on the night that you catch them, they look really good. Josh Giddey is on pace to have more sub 100 defensive rating games this one season with the Chicago Bulls and the last 2 seasons with the OKC Thunder. So it's like, it's these spurts. But then the way that I look at it is that anytime a team digs in on them defensively, because we don't have a real good half-court offense, things fall apart. And then defensively, we lose our momentum, all those type of things. And so this Bulls team isn't as bad as I think some were expecting. Right now, they're on a 35, 36 win pace. They were projected to win 28 games coming into the season. But I think it's just the inconsistencies. Kobe's an extremely inconsistent player. Zach LaVine can't stay healthy. Vooch is very consistent, but he doesn't play any defense. So I think it's just the overlapping of weaknesses by the Bulls players is ultimately what I think is going to doom them. They're probably going to make the play-in. They may even win a play-in game. I just don't think as you the further you go in that, the Bulls are going to have less and less success because they just don't do some of the things that good basketball teams do consistently.
So half-court offense on cleaning the glass, and numbers aren't everything, but they are 10th in that category. And what I think is interesting is the Bulls. I absolutely love what Billy Donovan has done this year, because the problem with the Bulls in previous years was he was trying to build a really grinded out defensive team without having any good defenders. And he actually did it. Like they were decent defensively every year, because it just shows you if you focus on scheme, you can get there. This year, threw that out the window and was like, we are going to shoot a ton of threes and we're going to limit them. They are actually, and I think this is fascinating because it shows you how important, like, the ridiculousness, as much as we talk about, everyone in the league's taking all these threes. It's not just that. Like, if you limit them and take a lot, you can just win games. Yes. Because the Bulls this season, defensively, they're horrible at the rim. They allow the 2nd most shots at the rim and the 6th highest percentage at the rim. So they get killed there. But they allow the 9th fewest 3-pointers and the 3rd lowest percentage. Like, that gets them in the conversation. Like, that gets you to where, like, you've got a chance. And I think that's really fascinating that's kind of how Billy has built this. And I'll also ask you, and like, I haven't done the deep dive on exactly, because sometimes it's like, oh, it's got to be Vooch. That's like got to be the difference. And then you find out later, it's like, oh, no, actually, it's not him. But some of the numbers pretty much say that it is Vooch. If they were to move on from just Vooch, kept LaVine, but they just moved on from Vooch and they actually got some rim protection, like just like a rim protector, what does that look like for you? Does that move the needle?
It changes some defensively, but then I know you said the numbers are actually 10th in half-court offense. I wonder how much of that is Nikola Vucevic, because he's like the only one that we feed into the paint. Like, Vooch is a very flawed player, make no mistake about it, but like, he is so important. Like, he is so steady for the Bulls that if you did remove him, we would have to rely on even more inconsistent players on offense, but maybe that's worth it for the defensive hang-up. I think if you get a mobile big that's a lob threat and a rim protector, I'd probably think at that point I'd bet on them to be able to come out of the play-in. I think that they can make it out of the play-in. Still not win a playoff series, maybe only win one game in the playoff series, but I do think that would change my perspective on the team quite a bit, actually.
I don't think they would do this, but I kind of think they should call Atlanta and see if they can sneak out Capella. Like, just do a rental on Clint for a year, right? It gives the Hawks another pick and roll threat, another 5-out weapon. They're probably not going to go for it because I think they realize they need a defense. But I really like this. I would be very interested to see what the Bulls look like just with Clint Capella. Just add like a veteran guy that can block shots and play drop coverage. Like, just do that. I would be very interested to see that. Meanwhile, really quickly, Philly's getting it together. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They get another win last night. They got the 9th best rating across the last 10 games. They're putting it together. Joel Embiid, 37 last night. Okay, we know the injury problem, right? We don't need to relitigate. You and I are on the same page. We're just like, yeah, sure. Okay, well, let's show me you can be healthy for an extended period of time and or anytime in April and May. We also know we can't predict those injuries. So let's take that out of it. If their body parts stop falling off, how good can this team be? Considering where they're at in the standings and how far they got to go, what's the highest you think they can get to?
I mean, luckily they're in the Eastern Conference, so even though they're right now with at the 11 seed, they're technically only 3 games back from the 6 seed. So that's how crazy it is in the Eastern Conference, right? So I think that they 8-10 in their 8-2 in their last 10. They won 4 games in a row. I think that by the end of the season, this Philadelphia 76ers team could be hovering around the 7th or 6th seed, depending on how things go for other teams. They're better than Detroit. They're better than Chicago. They're better than Indiana if they're fully healthy. I think that Miami, Milwaukee, Atlanta, that's kind of the range that the Philadelphia 76ers are probably going to find themselves in closer to the end of the season.
I think they can get 4.
Okay.
So Milwaukee, Giannis keeps missing games,
That's
which is
true.
that's going to impact the MVP stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about that sometime. Orlando, there's still no word on Paolo, and we don't know how long Franz is going to be out, and they can't score at all. And it's like they pull off victories like the comeback win versus the Nets the other night, but it's real touch and go for them. I don't buy the Hawks. I still am kind of like, show me you can do this for 3 months. I don't buy Miami. We know that they're on thin ice with the Jimmy stuff. It's real touch and go with them. Indiana, I think, is probably like they're starting to turn the corner. They're 7-3, but the Sixers with their talent, I do think could wind up being the 4 seed, and that puts you in the conversation, man. Like if they could just get back and be a 4 seed, that's a huge win considering how the season started. Because it's like, oh, but you have to go through Boston the first round, do you? Because it might be Cleveland, and nobody's still as good as the Cavs are. Nobody's scared of Cleveland, nor should you be until they prove it. So, like, Sixers are not dead here. If they could just one time stay healthy, just please stay healthy one time.
That's a lot to ask, man. A lot to
ask. All right. On the other side, it's New Year's. Happy New Year to all of you. We're going to talk about lessons that we learned from 2024. Plus, we're going to talk about our basketball fan resolutions. That's next here on Locked On NBA.
Sorry, mouse.
Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money's been great. I've had some changes in job stuff, so I've had to kind of get frugal on the old spending. And Rocket Money's been great by showing me what I'm spending, where I'm spending it, and things that I didn't know I was paying for because I signed up for subscriptions because I'm like, oh, this will be great for me, and then never touched it again. And Rocket Money's been great about showing me that. It's the layout on the dashboard is phenomenal. It's not confusing. You're not like, how do I make sense of this? It will tell you, hey, recurring bills. Check that out, and you'll be able to find all of your recurring subscriptions. Find those, cancel them. It will help you cancel one so you don't even have to mess with it, which is great because I hate talking to human beings. So it's phenomenal to just have them do it. You can also ask it to lower your bills. I asked it to lower 2 of my key bills, and they went in and did it and got it done and saved me money over the course of the year. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Doug Branson is out for a few days, trying to figure out where the entire spirit of the Charlotte Hornets went. All right. So, Hayes, Happy New Year's to you. It's 2025 tomorrow. We're doing this on New Year's Eve. I want to ask you this question because I think it's, I originally had done more looking forward. If we do a show on tomorrow or maybe Thursday, we'll talk about kind of like what do we expect for 2025. But I like New Year's because I like to look back. I think it's a nice time to kind of reflect on the year that was because that's how we as human beings process time. What to you, when you look back at the NBA in 2024, what's the biggest thing that you learned about the NBA this year?
That fans don't know what they want. I honestly, I don't think NBA fans know how to complain, but I don't think they really understand what they want. And one of the things that made that stand out to me is something that happened recently. With the tension in the recent games over the course of the week, I saw a small segment of fans that are like, yeah, we want the competition back. But then, like, there are a lot of people who complained about it. And like I said, I don't want people necessarily to throw punches and stuff, but it's that. Then the All-Star game, and they're trying to find something different. But people complain about that. It's just, NBA fans, they know about what they want for their team. And I think a lot of NBA fans don't know really what they want as far as the way that the league can grow and that it can grow interest in. That's something that stood out to me negatively. Positively, the NBA Cup is a hit for me, and I hated the idea of it coming in. I absolutely hated it. Some of the best games that I watched so far this year were NBA Cup games, and that whole tournament, especially the knockout rounds, were all amazing games.
Yeah, I think it's been a win. I think one of the things I think that's been really interesting is I think there's two types of fans. And I think there are some fans that are like, yeah, no, sometimes your team just doesn't have it. I actually kind of wonder if there's a crossover between baseball fans and this. I think baseball fans are much more okay because of the number of games with just like, yeah, no, we, didn't make it. We just didn't hit anything and we lost to the Red Sox, whatever. It's just like another game versus the fans that are like, I want every game to be a little exciting. I want to feel like there's a chance for us to win, and it should never feel like they just don't have it. And those are the fans I think that want to reduce the schedule and that like things like the tournament. And so that's kind of one of the things is, how okay are you with tradition and the idea of like what you've always grown up with, 82 games, rather than I want the games to be better. That's kind of the tension point. Because I think there's a fair point to be said on both sides for tradition and wanting the games to be better. And I just don't think that we're at a point where we can do both. For me, the biggest thing I learned in 2024, the new CBA has screwed everything up. Everything. When the Los Angeles Clippers were like, no, we're good, with Paul George. That is an owner that has made it very clear that he wants to win a championship and is willing to spend whatever. Cost is not the problem. Other franchises that hypothetically I cover on a nightly basis on a podcast called Hypothetically Locked On Nuggets, they wanted an excuse not to spend. Oh, we can't go in. Sorry, it limits our flexibility. Oh, we got to get. Yes, we get the cost down. It does lower the tax bill. But really, it's the basketball side of it. But like Steve Ballmer is not that. Steve Ballmer's like, I don't care. I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. And their inability to do that because of the second apron is, to me, shocking. And it shows you, I think we're seeing this with the Miami Heat, who I think would definitely keep Jimmy Butler if it wasn't for the second apron. It's forcing hard decisions. And my friend Seth Partnow, he used to work at The Athletic. He's actually kind of in favor of these measures because he's like, you should have to make tough decisions. You shouldn't have to take the easiest path here and just be like, yeah, we'll just keep him because it's easier that way. It means that you actually have to think through strategically. And I get that point. But I do think that we're really facing a problem of how do you build a great team now? Because the Boston Celtics have done it and they paid everybody. And then they immediately turned and started taking offers to sell the team. And that to me is like very notable that it's like, yeah, we'll pay this because we're not going to be on the hook for it eventually. It'll be somebody else's job to tear it down when it's too expensive. And the Nuggets lost KCP because they were just like, nope, we just can't go in the second apron. Can't do it. It limits we can't do any trades if we do that. All these teams are having to make those kind of decisions. And I just think that the CBA is so dramatically restrictive in terms of retaining free agents that fans love and trades. I just wonder if we're going to have to see some revisions to this, given what we've already seen in the first year of it, Hayes.
It's extremely like that second tax apron is damning when you look at it. Like the fact, because I knew you couldn't aggregate salaries like for one player. I didn't realize when you're over the second tax apron, you can't trade multiple players in a trade at all. Like that's crazy, right? So like you really, if you're getting into that second tax apron, you better be damn sure about the team that you've built there, because if you're not going to be able to easily move out of it unless it's basically a lateral move or somebody just happens to want an expiring contract that you have and you got a player that matches it exactly. Like it's so incredibly restrictive that teams, I think, they're going to learn from the Phoenix Suns mistake, because I do think the Suns want to make a deal if they could. But between Bradley Beal having a no trade clause, and them being what almost $30 million into the second tax apron, they have almost no movement at all, and it's really crazy.
Finally, we'll wrap up here. What's your basketball fan New Year's resolution? We'll talk teams maybe on Thursday, but what's your basketball fan New Year's resolution? What's the thing that you want to do different as a fan in 2025?
I want to say get back to going to more games. I think being on this side, it's actually more restrictive to go to games sometimes because they don't have as much flexibility when I need to hop on a stream or something like that. But back before I joined Locked On, I used to go to probably 15, 18 games a season, not just in Chicago, but like go to other places. I used to go to DC all the time to see. I love the city of DC. I hate the stadium. So that's kind of my resolution, is able to go back to games a little bit more in 2025.
You and Ted Leonsis both hating the Wizards Stadium.
I hate that stadium.
Mine is to get back to trying to find out the stuff I don't know. So I've been doing this this is going to be my 18th season next year, covering the NBA and writing about it daily. And that's a while. It's not as long as other guys, but I've been doing it a while now. I'm coming up on 2 decades covering the league. And what happens is, like, you just kind of fall back on, I know what this is. I know that. And you lose that curiosity side of you. And I love finding out things that I didn't know. I love finding out things about players that I didn't really notice, or teams, or these kind of things. And there's so many like small mechanisms that you can see in the game when you really kind of dive in. So my resolution in 2025 is to stop assuming as much and start actually asking questions about why things are, and try and ask more questions in 2025. All right, it's going to do it for Locked On NBA. I hope everyone has a safe, healthy, and happy New Year. Stock up on the Gatorade. Have yourselves a great night. We will see you. We're going to take off tomorrow unless there's breaking news, and we'll see you on Thursday for the first edition of Locked On NBA Daytime in 2025. Happy New Year's to all of you. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On NBA.